following is a special presentation of KNX News 97.1 FM.
From the Odyssey Soundspace on the Miracle Mile.
This is Priced Out of SoCal. Will homeownership ever be affordable again? A KNX News Town Hall.
Here are Mike Simpson and Charles Feldman.
If you want to know just how unaffordable Southern California real estate has gotten, let's look at the numbers. Shock value is built in. Median home price in LA County, almost $880,000. Orange County, it's close to $1.4 million. Perspective, median home price for the whole country, about $390,000. So our housing market is at least twice as expensive as most other places.
Now, for generations, the American dream, it was the ability to own your own home. But for the first time, it's out of reach for people who otherwise have sort of checked off all of the marks of success, whatever any one of you thinks would be the success. I see somebody shaking their head yes here. Tonight we're going to hear from people who did the work, they put in the time, they put in the effort that should have led to home ownership, but it didn't. So we will talk with them.
We have a panel tonight made up of people who have spent years unsuccessfully trying to find a home. Cassius Rutherford is in his late 20s, so UC Irvine graduate, works for an EV charging company. Single father, also helps care for his own father. He's been looking for his first home in the Anaheim, Yorba Linda area, although now searching throughout Orange County and even southern LA County for options. Maria Rosales lives with her parents and her daughter in a mobile home for over 2 decades. She's in her mid-30s, works as a public health research assistant, Charles R. Drew University. Searched for a home in the South LA Watts area for years and years and years. Finally, this last November, 2023, with the assistance of Habitat for Humanity, Maria was able to buy her first home. Elisa de la Pena, civil engineering and transportation professional in her 30s, Southern California native, born and raised, designing roadways in Orange and LA County, perpetually renting millennial, I feel you, on a journey to become a first-time homeowner in her community. And our real estate experts tonight, Melinda and Scott Tamkin, husband and wife realtor duo, founding partners of Tamkin Real Estate Group, sold a combined $1 billion worth of real estate over their 30-year career. Thanks everybody for being here.
Before we get into with our experts why this condition exists, why it is almost impossible to buy a home in California, especially Southern California. I want to start off, Maria, let me start off with you. Can you give us a sense of the frustration that you experienced in trying to find a home?
The frustration was more rooted in the need of finding a home, I think. So just to add on to what was, how I was introduced, I lived in transitional housing for many years. And that can be defined in different ways. But for me, it was defined living in a mobile home, 3 to be exact, for 2 decades. So out of desperate need, and not only my need, but also my family. I live with my parents and my younger sister. Looking for a home became that, and that was a driving factor to look for that. And yes, it was very expensive. My goal in life was to stay in the community where I'm from, which is Willowbrook. It's unincorporated between Compton and Watts. And I found that through Habitat.
Let me ask you, and I don't normally like to ask people personal financial questions, but I am going to ask you, and probably everybody else on the panel, because I think it's important to this. You don't have to get too specific, but can you just let us know what sort of income were you bringing in over those years when you were trying to find affordable housing?
So I have 2 jobs.
Oh, 2 jobs?
I have 2 jobs, yeah.
Wow.
I have 2 jobs, which for me it's a lot of work, but it's a blessing because I like what I do. So I'm a full-time public health research assistant at a university in my community, and then I also support a family caring for a loved one who with physical disability. So yeah.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that's what. I had to create more income to be able to achieve something like home ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does it feel now to have a place that's finally yours?
So I'm still processing that. It's still sinking in. I think we closed in November, so it's about to be half a year, and just seeing the change through the eyes of my parents, it's what fills me up very much. So.
Cassius, right? Did I get that right? Cassius? Yeah,
Yes.
Cassius. You're still looking, right? How long have you been looking anyway?
Yeah, I've been looking for a couple of years now. I think I'm a little earlier in my search. I'm 26, going on 27 this year.
So you started when you were roughly 24.
Yes,
Okay.
I started a couple of years ago after the birth of my son. That was a really motivating factor to really focus on securing a home for us.
So Orange County, though, that's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like the cards are way stacked against you looking at a place like that. And now you've had to, expand that box that you want to be in?
Absolutely. Orange County is definitely, it's where I went to school and where my network is and friends and a lot of family are. But yeah, it's forced us to consider, Yorba Linda is a good location, but even like the outskirts of Orange County, like Yorba Linda, is completely unaffordable. So South LA County, the Inland Empire is where a lot of folks my age in Orange County are going to buy a house, actually. So I may very well follow in their footsteps.
What kind of prices were you looking at?
Around the $500,000 to $600,000 range.
Okay, and so you would have to have put down roughly how much as a down payment?
A good number, I would think, from what I've been told from a realtor friend who's been advising me, is $80,000 to $100,000 is a minimum that I need to have saved. So we're I'm kind of about that point, like $75,000 saved and ready to go towards a house.
Elisa, your situation and how difficult it is to kind of make that jump. Where are you when it comes to, rent being one of our perpetually renting millennials, as we described you, versus what that mortgage would end up being?
It was important for me to describe myself as a perpetually renting millennial just because I'm born and raised in Orange County in Southern California, and never in my life have I lived in my own house. I've never lived in a house. I've always lived in apartments. I've always rented. And I see friends that are maybe in better positions. They have a little bit more intergenerational wealth that have been able to overcome a lot of the barriers, and even then, even with that support from their families, from their communities, from their well-paid careers, it's still challenging. It's still incredibly competitive, and so I've been searching. I've gone through, hunting for mortgage products that won't keep me house poor in the future. And we're in a place today where I've had to back away from applications, back away from potential, housing, potential homes because of the competitive nature of it, because of, I would absolutely be struggling to enter, to hold on to this house if I did manage to win this bid.
Right, we are going to get back to you guys momentarily, but I want to now switch to our experts, Melinda and Scott. The stories that you've just heard from these three, I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that these are typical stories that you hear all the time, or no?
I think I appreciate all your stories, and I think they are, yes, probably typical of what you're hearing in the market, but there are ways, and I think our job is to present creative solutions to find a home, and everybody's situation is different. We work on the west side of Los Angeles, so maybe the product we're selling might be a little bit different, so different situations for different people. But one thing I will say about each of your stories that I really admire is that you're very young, Cassius, to start now. I think it's great. You're trying to look for creative product out there, and you're going to find one at some point. So I try to remain optimistic. You did find something. So what I'm hearing here is that I think we're all going to get to a place where you will find something. I, as a realtor, and Scott, our job is to help present creative solutions and present ideas and maybe think outside of the box, but to help people find their dream home. And I don't think this is out of reach necessarily for everybody. It might take a little longer to get there. It might mean casting a wider net. You're looking at other areas now, but I think there are so many opportunities. We just have to keep working towards them, and it may take longer than what we thought it was going to take.
But Scott, one of the things I heard in passing from one of our panelists here was the other problem, which was that even if someone were to find a home and manage to do whatever needed to be done to be able to afford it, then comes the problem, okay, so now you're in the house, but you're mortgaged to the hilt. You still have to live your life. You still have to raise a family. Where does that money come from?
Right. So part of that comes down to finding the right quote unquote product, right? So not everybody can afford the sort of 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool that's sort of the American dream, right? But there are other options. There are tenants in common properties, for example, where you could buy an apartment building and go in on it with 4 other people, and you each have a unit, and you have ownership in that product. There's a duplex or a fourplex or a multitude of properties that you go into with other investors and can afford it. So it's looking at things differently. It's not just a condo or a single-family house, and so then you don't wind up house poor because you're sharing the expenses. You're sharing the property taxes, for example, if you go in with friends or family. So there are options out there, and it's not just waiting for affordable properties to come on the market because there's no promise of that happening. It's what other things can you look at that might work for you?
What about people who don't necessarily have those options? I mean, some people can get some help from mom or dad or grandma. Some people have family members they can go in on it with. Or we had a report on the air today, some millennials now are even like going with their friends. Let me buy a house with you guys.
Right.
Low percentage, because that can get tricky, but people are doing it. Do you have to get super creative, and then what happens if you don't have those options? Are you out of luck, or are there still places where can you afford a house in Southern California?
It's going to be
right?
it's going to be out of the area, out of state. A lot of people are moving out of country. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? But those options are to find a job elsewhere, leave your community. It's horrible to think about, and then of course continuing to rent.
Well, but Melinda, I mean, when I drive through whatever neighborhood I drive through in Southern California, there's no shortage of houses, lots of homes. So you're saying, Scott, people have to start thinking about moving elsewhere. Who's living in all the homes now?
The people that financed at 2.5% to 3%
Years
several
ago.
years ago, right?
Right, and they don't want to sell
So
now.
they're not selling, and
Right.
that's keeping things a very tight grip on the market. That will change. Some people did 5-year, 7-year, 10-year interest-only loans at super low that are going to reset. Some people will not be able to afford that reset, and more properties may come on the market. But it's not. We're not facing a situation where there's going to be a lot of inventory hitting the market anytime soon.
Yeah, because even when that kind of fall off happens, we're still nowhere near the demand for everybody out there looking for these houses.
And builders can't build fast enough, and it's hugely expensive to build today.
But isn't it also the case that there are large companies that are buying up existing homes to turn them into rental properties? You're
here.
saying no.
Not here.
Not here?
I think in other parts of the country,
Why
you're
not
seeing
here?
more of that.
Why are we so unique?
It's too expensive.
Yeah,
It makes no sense.
right.
Right. So,
Explain that. Why does it not make sense?
If a large institutional investor can buy neighborhoods of property
Yeah.
and rent for a higher percentage than what the mortgage is or would be, it makes a lot of sense. Here, the cost of housing is so much, and the rent amount is not commensurate with the cost of the property. So it would be more of an equity play. They would buy it, keep it long term, and bank on the equity when it comes time to sell it down the road. But that's not their business model per se. So we're not seeing houses sell to institutional investors ever.
What are you seeing when you've got a listing? How fast does that go? Are we still in we hear the stories of, oh my gosh, all these bids are flying in? Or is it, oh, cancel the open house because I already got a buyer for this thing?
It's incredibly tied to the list price. So if a seller's wise and says, oh, property's worth X, I'm going to list slightly under X, they get multiple offers, it'll sell very quickly. A lot of sellers are stuck in the mindset of several years ago where you can put any price on it and the buyers will come, and that's not necessarily the case. So we're seeing it slow down if prices are if listing prices are too high.
Cassius, let's get you some free help. Melinda, what would you tell him to do?
I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're broadening your search. You're looking at other areas. You want to be creative. You said it's a multi-generational household. So that's creative. You're not just thinking that you have to have a certain part of Orange County. You're broadening your search. You're working, I would hope, with a professional. You said a friend. I will say that I think it's important to work with someone who has a lot of experience and can help guide you.
And that doesn't mean somebody who just got the real estate license. That
Right.
means somebody who's been doing it for a long time, because it's changing. The market's changing a lot.
And we see a lot. So the longer that you're in any business, you've seen ups and downs and things that are cyclical. But I think you're doing the right thing, and I think I would encourage you to keep going forward. And I don't think you would stop here and give up hope and say, well, rates are high, I'm not finding something in Orange County. You're doing the right thing. You're going to keep an optimistic attitude, keep looking, don't give up, and I think the right thing will happen.
Yeah, but you've been looking how long?
About a year and a half,
Year
2
and a half.
years.
Is that typical, year and a half?
I think for the product he's looking for, it's probably typical right now. It just, everybody's situation is different when we work with buyers. So I think for you, maybe, this is going to be your year.
And one of the things to consider, again, is if you look at a duplex or a triplex or even a house with an ADU, the accessory dwelling unit that's rentable, the rent that comes in would offset your mortgage payment, and most lenders give you up to 75% of the value of whatever that rent is toward your mortgage. So you might be considering a single-family house or a condo or something, but if you consider a multifamily property and are open to having renters on the property with you, it can really open a lot of doors.
By the way, for those just joining us, you are listening to a KNX News special town hall priced out of SoCal, and we're talking to a panel of folks who have been looking to buy a home in Southern California. One now has a home, and we have some experts with us as well. So we thank you all in the studio to being with us, and also those of you who are listening and watching on YouTube and elsewhere.
Cassius, when you're looking, what are you finding? Are these like very starter-ish places that haven't changed since 1972, or what are we talking?
I mean, yeah, to be fair, I have some basic standards, like with a family and a young child, you want like air conditioning for the summers. But yeah, it kind of feels like climbing a sand dune, especially over the last few years where interest rates have been changing. Home prices have continued to accelerate rapidly. So, for some people, that can outpace their ability to save. So it has been challenging to keep up with that and to, continue putting money in the pot without having to dip into it for other emergencies that come up.
I'm curious, when you were talking before, Melinda and Scott, about, don't do it with a friend, do it with an expert. And that's somebody, I think you said, Scott, don't get somebody who just got their real estate license. But that does raise the question, how does somebody know that the real estate agent they're working with is worth their grain of salt?
That's a really good question. You can tell how long somebody's had their license if you go to the DRE, the Department of Real Estate website, and look up licensee. But the other thing would be sort of to talk about expertise in terms of geography, whether or not they're an expert in the area that you're looking in, what kinds of things they've sold, how they've negotiated deals on behalf of their clients. Pretty simple things to sort of question. I mean, it would be like, going to a new doctor. You're going to want to ask specific questions. I hope this isn't your first time doing an open heart surgery, right? I mean, it's important stuff to sort of know. So
what if I feel like because it's my first time home search, or I'm early in the process, that they're not going to give me the time of day because, there are houses out there they can make a lot of money on and people with money to go buy them?
Then they're the wrong person to work with. If we get a first time call or an introduction to somebody who's never bought a house before, they're just starting, I get very excited because our business is much more than this a commission. It's about helping people and getting them into their dream property and into their home, and that's what we love. So if you're working with somebody who's like doesn't have the time of day, you're working with the wrong person.
And I will say that I think that no matter what price range you're looking at, Scott is always really good about giving first-time buyers a whole checklist of things to start doing and start looking at. And so you want someone who's definitely looking out for your best interest. And I think sometimes you can get a sense. If someone's not returning your call, if they're not reachable, if they're not attending showings with you, and they're saying, just go look at all these things and let me know. We go out of our way to meet our clients at properties and really hold your hand through the process. So I think you want someone that you feel comfortable with, that you trust, and that answers all your questions.
And that also, I'm sorry to interrupt, that will also bring you alternative product, like show you things other than what you might be looking at because they understand how the market is,
No, this is all good advice. But if you're going to an open house and there's, say, 40 or 50 other families there in a 1 hour, 2 hour period, you know, what's your advice to be competitive in that environment?
You have to bring a bag of rats with you and let them loose. And then,
Run.
no, I think that the
Play
really
dirty, everybody.
the important thing is to focus on where your strengths are and why you are the buyer for that property. If it's exactly the property you want, which is another reason why you want to work with an experienced agent, because they'll know how to maneuver that process, how to communicate with the seller, the seller's agents, and deliver the best package for you. It's not always about the top dollar. Oftentimes, sellers want to sell to a young family because they have an emotional attachment. So how do you pull on the heartstrings of the sellers so that they understand that?
Francesca, I want to ask you something because you ended up in a different situation the way you finally found a house, right? How?
Maria.
Maria.
Yeah,
Maria.
Maria.
Sorry. Maria. No, Maria. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was able to achieve homeownership through Habitat for Humanity.
Right. So explain what that is.
So the program is designed for first-time home buyers who come from low-income families to go through this process and achieve a home. There are very strict requirements to even start the process. There's an application process. Habitat has its own program that allows us to get involved in their programs, and we had to go through education. Again, I am a first-time home buyer. This process was a year ago, so I had no idea about what this process would look like. So I had to take home education buying classes through Habitat and learn the different terminology and what to expect when getting the loans, the down payments, the credit scores, and having all the package together to submit the application and eventually to get approved. So as a first-time home buyer, that means that I didn't have like a family history of someone who owned a home. I didn't have grandparents, like none of that. I'm very happy to say that my parents and I are like first time building that. So for us, it means that it's for my future generation, for my future kids, they'll have something to rely on from whatever comes out of this.
But what was the process like?
So it's an application. So I remember
so that's
I went to they were building in my neighborhood.
Okay.
So that stood out to me. It was an empty lot. And I went in. I was desperately looking for a better place to live in, and I saw that they were building. They had a virtual session in the community. I attended that, and they had very strict requirements with credit score, income, job, background check, you name it. And they described it as a very intense college application. So in my reaction was like, well, I can definitely do that. And I did. I took that leap of faith, and then that's where it all started. And then from there, it took months to get approved. And then from there, I still had to, before closing, I had to submit proof of employment, proof of income, banking, all of that.
Right.
So it was very, very strict and very new to me. As a person who had never gone through this, it can be very scary because they ask for very sensitive information, but it's very understanding considering the process. But yeah,
So it's worked out for you.
It worked out, yeah.
Right. And we are going to talk a little bit later in the show to some folks from Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, so they made it happen.
They made it happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elisa,
Real quick, I just wanted to jump in. One of the things that you need to think about too is you had mentioned about buying and then being house poor because all your money goes to your home. It's going to feel like that no matter what, and you just have to take a leap of faith. And she took a leap of faith with Habitat. And if you find something on the market and it's just overwhelming and it's just a stretch and you think you're not going to be able to do it, you have to go for it because you'll look back 10 years later and go, oh my God, I'm so glad we made that decision. And that's true for buyers at any price point, whether it's $500,000 or $25 million, buyers have the same experience.
And one other thing I was going to say, when you asked about how you could be competitive if, say, there are 40 people looking at the same open house, and I think this is something your realtor will guide you with, make sure your package is ready. Make sure you're approved. You're ready to go. If you see something, you want to write the offer and you want to get it in and have your realtor, your agent work for you, but everything should be ready to go. If you're just kind of talking to your lender, that's not good enough. You've got to have the package ready. So if that work has been done, then you're more competitive.
Melinda and Scott, the Habitat for Humanity, it worked clearly for Maria. Is that a good solution for many people? Are there caveats to that?
Yes, I mean, you have to qualify, but the homes are limited. I mean, Habitat builds on available lots in certain areas, and just not much land for them to build on. So it's very limited. We've had experience with Habitat. It's an incredible organization. We support it in many different ways. We love Habitat, and it's not going to work for every single buyer. There's just not enough out there, although I'm sure they'd love to provide for everybody.
Lisa, I was kind of going to go the same route that Scott went with you about, being so close to what you think is doable and that being like a very scary place. I mean, have there been almost near misses where you thought, I should have done that? Or are you glad you didn't? Because you said you had to backpedal now, which also must be super tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand that it's scary. It's something that you want to go into with a full understanding of what the consequences might be.
Especially when we're playing with numbers like
Right,
this.
exactly. And I've been open to all of these options. I've been, I haven't confined myself to one specific area. I haven't, confined myself to searching for single-family homes. I have, contacts in the construction, the building industry, and I've looked for lots that could potentially hold ADUs, knowing that that could help me qualify for a property. With that, it's still not enough. It's still, I don't know what the situation is in Los Angeles County, but definitely in Orange County, we have cash buyers. There's cash buyers that show up for these properties, especially if there's that potential for, income, like rental, as an investment property. And for me, a first-time home buyer, yeah, it's an investment in my future, but it's fundamentally shelter. I need a place to live. I need a place to take care of my family. I do not have a son because I don't feel like I can have one. I don't feel like I can afford one. And I know a lot of people my age feel the same way. Where am I going to raise my family? Stuffed into my one bedroom ADU? It's not practical. And I unfortunately have also had older colleagues, older generation give me the advice of maybe look elsewhere, maybe look out of state. And that is not a solution. It's not a solution. You do not want your professionals, you don't want a brain drain happening because you can't house us.
Well, all right, so back to our experts. What advice can you give her?
I mean, I don't know what your income level is, right? But it's sort of that's what the enabler is. So you have to be able to afford it. You have to be pre-approved. Melinda mentioned that before. Like go in strong to these properties, and cash buyers aren't always the best buyers. Oftentimes, cash buyers think because they're cash buyers, they can offer less. So if you can offer more and afford more, there are different things you can do to change the balance of that. Unfortunately, out of state, I know you're not going to move out of state, but for a lot of people, they might have to. It's just the nature of Southern California. And frankly, if real estate prices came down significantly in Southern California, we would fall into the ocean because the whole world would come here, right? It's almost like the house prices are artificially high almost to keep people out.
And
I
you
just
don't
want to
think that's ever going
stay.
to change?
I don't think it's ever going to change. The weather's not going to get any worse here.
Good.
So that's my point. So I've already seen, in my case, in my family personally, and I know anecdotally around me, people are leaving because of the affordability. That's an issue. I've seen people leave to Las Vegas. I've seen people leave to Arizona. My brother moved to Arizona. And this is my home. I mean, I understand the fear that, California, Southern California especially, is a very beautiful place to live. But I am part of this community, and we need to be able to keep me in my community. And I think there are creative solutions that exist, right? The traditional housing market as it exists today doesn't service us. That's period. Like we're having to figure out, we're having to go through a nonprofit to find a home. That's just not sustainable. That's not tenable for everybody trying to stay in Southern California. And I mean, I'm open to collaborating with other colleagues on buying a house. But when what is in my price range is a dilapidated, building from the 1930s.
Yeah, I asked Cash just that earlier, and I'm curious too about what you find when you do look.
Yeah.
And then when you buy that, I mean, if you get in that, are you ever going to be able to get into the other house, this non-starter house?
Exactly, right. So I think starter house, the definition of starter house has definitely evolved, right? Like what is in my price range is, like some tiny condo that, I'll be paying HOA fees for the rest of my life for, or, sacrifice not having parking or, a space for a pet or guests.
If you're just joining us again, this is KNX News Town Hall. Priced out of SoCal, will home ownership ever be affordable again? And it sounds as if the consensus seems to be that in Southern California, it may not be affordable anytime in any of our lifetimes, right, Scott?
Right. I think that the standard product that we all know of a home, a single-family house, a condo, is probably not going to be affordable enough to where the majority of the people that want to get a house can buy that house. So the product needs to change. For example, do you have friends, colleagues who are looking for a home as well right now?
Yes.
Okay. So my recommendation is that 4 of you go buy a 4-plex together as a tenants in common, and you hold that. There's one single assessor parcel number. You share on the taxes, and it's not a small little condo. There are no HOA fees. The 4 of you own that building together. And people don't think about that, but it's a great way to step into legitimate home ownership, and you own 1/4 of that property.
Okay, how do you feel about that, and then where does she find that?
So what he's talking about is a unicorn property, because those things are few and far between, and also something that is, going to be difficult to compete for. I mean, that feels like a solution, but it's still not easy to find something like that. And yeah, maybe builders can kind of
Maria?
shift their product.
No. Just following up, raising question. What families do you serve?
What family?
Yeah. Describe a family that you help get a home.
A wide variety of family. We work from first-time buyers to people who are selling multi-million-dollar homes.
I think what you're getting at is what socioeconomic groups.
Like
is-
socioeconomic, like
that's what she's
demographics
getting
of the
at.
families that you.
Yeah.
All kinds of different families.
I mean, surprisingly, even though our office is on the west side, a lot of our business is on referral, and we've been doing it for so long that we are selling properties from Malibu to the San Gabriel Valley to, we sold a house not long ago for someone in Pacoima. So it's a wide range. So I would say, as we mentioned earlier, when you're dealing with this is your biggest investment. You want someone who has experience, who can think out of the box, who can tell you to cast a wide net. And we are maybe not experts in all of Southern California, obviously. We don't work in Orange County, but we understand the market and we can help our clients think creatively. And so I don't think we're describing a unicorn property, but what we're saying is think out of the box. Think about joining efforts with someone and maybe a duplex. Duplexes maybe are easier to find than a 4-plex, but you can find something like that. It might need work, but you might be able to combine your resources with someone else's resources. And so maybe this family that we're describing, or you, or whoever, it's maybe not the typical family we work with, but we can certainly understand the plight of what you're trying to do and offer you ideas.
Scott, I am curious because there must have come a time when this situation radically changed. I mean, there was a time, otherwise there wouldn't be that many people in Southern California, when it wasn't that hard to find a home. So what changed? When did it change?
Right. So when you look at the increase in equity of homes and the value of homes over the past 20 years, in line with the amount of money people are making, right, the cost of housing has gone way higher on a percentage basis than earnings. And so I think, especially in Southern California, a lot of it has to do with the influx of people from other areas, other states, other countries, who come with money, who want to buy whatever they can buy, and collectively sort of keep the market buoyed. Even just after the last earthquake in '94, properties went down for a little bit, but then we forgot all about it and properties shot right back up.
All right, we're going to now say goodnight to Melinda and Scott Tampkin. Thank you both for
Thank
being
you.
with
Thank
us.
you. Appreciate it.
And hopefully we have a good grasp of the entrenched problems in Southern California, and it's clearly a red-hot real estate market. And we have a good sense of the frustrations, I think, of those who are trying to find a home for the very first time. So as we say goodnight to Scott and Melinda, we're going to say hello to a new group of folks. We want to bring up a pair of people who are working on solutions. Their two organizations, they helped us in preparation for this particular town hall, so we welcome you both.
Yeah, we've got Elizabeth Hansberg, urban planner, co-founder of People for Housing Orange County, has led a grassroots YIMBY effort, yes, in my backyard, in Orange County to build public support for the construction of more affordable housing. And also Francesca DeBrito, Senior Vice President, Habitat for Humanity, Greater LA. We heard of Habitat earlier. 15 years there, working with a wide variety of partners to secure resources they need for construction, for lending, and for home repair programs. Welcome, thanks.
So let me, Francesca, start with you, because I do want our audience to know a little bit more about your organization. We heard a little bit from Maria. Tell us about it.
Sure. Thanks for having us here. So Habitat for Humanity, it's a global nonprofit that promotes affordable housing, and our affiliate's based in Los Angeles. We've been around since 1990, have built, repaired, and renovated about almost 1,500 homes since then. So basically, Habitat promotes affordable housing, right? So we promote home ownership. Maria is one of our newest homeowners, and we offer resources for our homeowners so that they can get into the housing market.
But you heard Scott, I think, say that the one problem is that there aren't that many places, and as many homes as you may have built, it's clearly not a solution for everyone.
Right.
So what is the sort of tipping point? Where is the person who would greatly benefit from Habitat for Humanity as opposed to somebody who may be actually wasting their time?
So talk about the families that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, we'll say low income, so 30 to 80% of the area median income. Homeowners could be making in a family for maybe $95,000, so which seems like a really great salary, right?
But for four, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But can you live on it? So our typical homeowner might be making, I don't know, $85,000, $90,000 a year, a couple of members in the household, and so we're serving, 30 to 80% of the AMI, and we require a lot from our families. It's not easy, right? Good FICO score, down payment, consistent mortgage, 40 hours of financial literacy. We're a HUD certified counselor, so we do provide those classes. Sweat equity, everyone's favorite. You know, you have to help build your home or help build someone else's, right? A lot of skin in the game. So
wait, stop there.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, not everybody knows what sweat equity is.
Oh, right.
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah. So
our favorite.
tell our listeners and our audience, what exactly does sweat equity mean? It doesn't sound pleasant. I got to tell you that right off the bat.
it's so pleasant.
It's very pleasant.
Grab a hammer and get to work.
That's it. That's the Habitat model. So it's very much a partnership model, right? So our families are required to do, I don't know, it fluctuates through COVID, but maybe 250 to 500 hours of volunteer labor on their home or the home of another Habitat home owner, or future homeowner.
Maria, you did that?
How'd that go?
Oh, yeah.
Right. How did it go?
It was fun.
What did you actually do?
Okay, well, construction.
Yeah.
Working at the stores that Habitat have and supporting them in their efforts, in their events, in their.
But did you know anything about construction before?
No.
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 So did they teach you?
Yeah. It's
Right.
a very friendly environment. The construction worker, the team, they're there to teach us and give us specific instructions of what to accomplish that day. My parents were a major part of that, and considering that they're seniors, they felt very productive.
While they're building the home with sweat equity, do they know in advance, once the home is finished, what it's going to cost, what the mortgage is going to be?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all part of it.
Elizabeth, the question was raised earlier. In this market that we're in, with the salaries that we mentioned that sound really good, but you can't live on it, if you're going to buy a place, it was, do we have to have these nonprofits? Do people really need these if they're going to ever get into a place? Or are they going to need that state program that now is turning into a lottery? Because I think, it sold out in 11 minutes last time?
You're talking about the California Dream for All program?
Yeah.
Yes, it is very important that we put money behind down payment assistance for families, new Americans, people that are not necessarily coming with generational wealth, especially, first generation American born children of immigrants. Most people come here with not much to get a better life for their family. So I think providing that assistance and that scaffolding to make the new Americans the next generation of homeowners so that the American dream works for them is really, really important. But I have to say, I have a very different perspective than one of the realtors. And I really want to say, I think you are totally overlooking the opportunity for new construction. The idea that the problem is that we have too many people is I don't agree with that. The problem is that we refuse to build. And the biggest people who are barriers to building new housing and increasing the supply of housing are the people who already have the homes. Okay, I advocate for affordable housing, workforce housing, first-time home buyer product all over Orange County. And I'm telling you, it's the single-family homeowners at a shared property line when the developer wants to build a 2-story or a 3-story townhome who freak out about the fact that someone might look in their backyard, right? As though these young families have nothing better to do than stand there on a chair looking through those, high up
Your
level
neighbor
windows.
can do it through the fence too. So,
Well,
right.
It's right, exactly.
But isn't it also because, rightly or wrongly, they think it's going to bring down their property value? And does it?
But that's not so. Government doesn't like the process of entitlement of going through, getting an approval to build a project. That's a local government process. Government does not exist to preserve the home values of existing homeowners, right? Government exists so that we can all live together in community and govern ourselves effectively so that everyone's rights are protected. She has a right, I would argue, she has a right to have an opportunity to be a homeowner in the community where she lives, where she grew up, and where she wants to stay.
But government does respond to constituents.
Exactly,
Right.
which is why if you are looking
but in some cases, I think you would agree with this. In some cases, when you say the government doesn't exist to protect the home values of their constituents, in practice that isn't always the case, is it? I mean, government often does serve to the benefit of those who are living and voting in that community.
This is the system, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Which is why, if you care about the future, if you care about the next generation, if you want your kids to be able to live here too, you have to elect people that are willing to allow for more housing to be built. More housing to be built at higher densities in places where we might not have thought of, that being a great site for housing. But if a developer's coming forward with a project that they can entitle, that they think they can make work, why would we say no to that, right? I mean, between CEQA protecting us from environmental, barriers, and NIMBYism and prevailing wage, and all the things that we ask of a project, right? Inclusionary, right? The cost of how these are choices of our making. These are policy choices of our making.
So CEQA there mentioned Environmental Quality Act.
Right.
Reviews and different regulations that you got to stick by. Home builders often say when the shortage is brought up, they'll say it's too expensive to build here. There are too many regulations and there's no place to put all of these. So
No
what do you
place to
say?
put all of these homes?
Yeah.
I know I have an email full of people asking me, hey, can you send a letter of support for my project? There are people that want to
You
build.
just have to go up.
Yes, absolutely. The 3-story townhome with tuck under parking, that's a typology. That is the first-time homebuyer product in Orange County. Now, it probably will come with an HOA. So some people may not want an HOA. So we need to have other choices
Those are getting
too.
really steep too.
But that is very much the first-time homebuyer product in Orange County. And the reason that the HOAs are there is because cities, Prop 13 has starved city government of money. And so when you're building and you're having to pay for all this infrastructure, all of that infrastructure, the city only maintains up to the property line. In my subdivision, which doesn't have, because it was built in the 60s, so it doesn't have an HOA, the government is responsible for each of the homeowners, right? In the new way we do it with townhomes or any type of multifamily homeownership, the city services up to the property line, and then the HOA takes over and deals with all of the individual homeowners within development. It's a different model, but we in part are doing this because cities don't have the budget for public infrastructure because of Prop 13.
You're listening to a KNX News Town Hall. It's priced out of SoCal. We're asking the big question, will homeownership ever be affordable again? You were just hearing with Elizabeth Hansberg there, and she's with People of Housing Orange County. Also, Francesca DeBrito is the Senior VP over at Habitat for Humanity. And we have a few people here looking for houses and one who already has one.
Habitat for Humanity operates in Orange County, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Cassius, I'm curious, have you explored that as a possibility since you're still looking?
Unfortunately, I'm one of those folks that does have an income that prevents me from qualifying for a lot of these new programs.
Right? Yeah.
But the reality is, like a lot of us that have been, quote unquote, successful and checked all the boxes that we were told from a young age that we were supposed to, and that would get us the American dream. People making six figures with decent savings and no debt. It's still really difficult, right? Like the goalpost keeps going farther and farther. And
Is that still a fair representation of the dream, or do we have to reassess the dream?
Well, yeah, maybe we have to reassess the dream. I have a little bit of flexibility because I work remotely, but it's still like, I really appreciate Elizabeth's point and what People for Housing advocates for, because should people, that can disrupt communities too, for people to be displaced and uprooted from their networks and families and friends, right? Like, does that, bring our communities closer together, or does that, bring our communities further apart?
Yeah, how do you feel when people say, oh, just go further out, go further? You mentioned Inland Empire. How far would you go, realistically?
We're still figuring that out.
Elizabeth, when you were talking about how maybe the solution is to build more housing, right? But until that happens, and politicians have been talking about that for a very long time in Southern California, and there's always a reason, it seems, why it doesn't happen. So in the interim, the question is, to what degree do people of the age, basically, of our panelists here, to what degree do they really need to change their concept of the American dream? And to what degree do they need to do that?
So I think that home ownership is such a part of the ethos of the American dream or the California dream. That program is called Dream for All, California Dream for All program, right? It, in its first incarnation, I believe, was serving families up to 210% of area median income. The new numbers just dropped for Orange County. $129,000 is the median income for a family of four. So do the math on that. And last year, that is around who could be assisted by this down payment assistance program. Mm-hmm. That's whack. It's wacky when we're subsidizing people making 210% of area median income. I'm not saying I don't want to do it. I do, because I want Elisa de la Pena to live where she wants to live, which is Orange County, right? And Cash and Maria to live where they want to live in their communities. So I'm not going to ask them to change their mind or to give up the dream. I think the creativity that he was talking about, tenants in common or looking at a townhome.
You're talking about Scott.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, the guy that was sitting right here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're on the radio. We all switch chairs.
Yeah.
I think that, a different different housing typology. I think part of the problem we've had is that for so long, Southern California only wanted to build single-family homes, and currently a lot of the older, whiter, wealthier, I call them Harry and Harriet homeowner, right? They're usually NIMBYs.
Yeah.
The only housing that's acceptable to them that can be built on the adjacent property is a single-family home. So I think getting more creative about what we conceive of as part, we have to expand the dream, but I don't think anybody should give it up, because it's what made America work. America worked for my family. For 4 generations of immigrants, came from, they were Eastern European Jews, came with nothing, probably similar situation to the people that are at our border today. And in 4 generations, I'm here in Southern California, and I'm a homeowner with a program designed for teachers, because I'm married to a public school teacher, that was backed by CalSTRS. CalSTRS backed our down payment mortgage. That's how we got into our.
Elisa, is there anything that you've heard tonight that helps you? And be honest.
none of this is new information to me.
Okay.
None of this is new information, and I've had the pleasure of putting in some sweat equity, not for my own home, but just to help somebody else achieve their dream. I think everybody on this couch is optimistic. We still believe in that California dream, that American dream, because I have friends and colleagues that have given up. They have decided to relocate. They have decided that they'll be renting forever. But I'm here because I think that there is opportunity that still exists in California. I know, personally, I live in an ADU, and that's something that can fit on a single family home lot. I wouldn't be able to live in the neighborhood that I live in were it not for that ADU. I love it. I love that community. I feel like a part of it. And I could not afford any of those homes. So I think that, yes, it's important that we continue to look for creative solutions. I just want to empower people my age. I want to find something that we can do at our level, because I feel like I'm at the whims of, the market, which I don't have any control over, the local government policies, which, as a renter, I don't have a lot of political sway. Builders, I understand their hands are tied because they need, return on their investment for each of these properties. But, let's start thinking outside of the box. Let's start thinking outside of the market. And that's what Habitat for Humanity does, because those homes don't go back into the market. They stay with Habitat for Humanity for people that need affordable housing.
Do you think people in an older generation or two up get what you're going through, or is it kind of like, well, we did
No.
it, so you can do it too?
I
And,
think the vast
get a smaller apartment or whatever
majority-
line is given out.
Right. I think the vast majority of current homeowners don't really understand, or they've been outside of this so long that they don't really understand the realities as they exist today. So I think the people that do get it, the homeowners that understand the plight, are the ones that are realizing that their kids can't stay here. Their kids are gonna have the same exact struggles as me, and they're realizing,
Well,
that something needs to happen.
To go back to our experts, so Elisa is saying that she would like to do things that would empower, right, people of her age. What can they do? What can she do?
Well, I mean, you're good.
No, I mean, there's all kinds of models that we
Yeah.
can talk about. We can talk about community land trusts. We can talk about, a lot of the universities that have a model for faculty housing where the land is held by the nonprofit and then the people buy the structure, right? The professor, so there are models that can, be looked at. We have a really, we have a big land trust in Orange County called the Irvine Community Land Trust, which has benefited from being in Irvine, which is a very well-resourced community, and it has, I think, it has gotten some assistance from possibly the Irvine company. So there were resources put into it. But they've built, they had, I think, 60 units of median-priced townhomes. And for 60 units, or maybe it was 50 units, they had over 6,000 applications. And that's for serving that 80 to 120 area median income. So, 80,000 to 140,000, in there.
Yeah. Francesca?
I was going to say, some resources, just so it's not doom and gloom, right? There's a great website called downpaymentresource.com. That's very simple. You can just plug in your salary and where you're trying to look. It could be as vague as a county, could be as distinct as a street.
Speak with
Oh,
Mike.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. She's here.
Yeah, just downpaymentresource.com. It's not a Habitat affiliated site, but it is helpful as a resource to look at what you might qualify for. Habitat has a great down payment assistance program, and these are things that is just not Habitat specific. We get money that emanates from the feds and comes down through HCD, but we now have a program for family up to $100,000 in down payment assistance. That was one of the things that Maria took advantage of. So I would say, let's look at other resources. Habitat does build moderate income homes sometimes too. So between looking at the down payment assistance, things that you can do immediately, looking at these resources, other loans that are available, and taking advantage of some of these homeownership classes to try to work the system.
In our closing minutes, let's go through our panel again, and we'll start with Maria and then Lisa and then Cassius. What are your feelings about what we've been discussing tonight and what you think the future has in store for not only you, but for people in your age group who are looking for homes? Maria.
Yeah. So at least for me, I'm learning this process, and I'm very excited for what's to come. Again, it's not only, if it weren't for Habitat, I wouldn't have been able to achieve this. And I am very, very, very blessed to have been able to have such opportunity come my way. I think for people my age, I think it's definitely just being hopeful and also being advocates for fighting for this right. I think that we all deserve to have a very decent home, and I think just partnering with nonprofits like Habitat or People for
Housing, Orange County.
People for Housing, working with people who will have a better understanding of your condition and not really putting the blame on you. I think I feel like I got a sense of that this evening. So that's why I asked, what families were they serving? Because I think everyone is working very hard. Everyone deserves a home. It's just really striving and partnering with people who will have a better understanding of our situation. Because that's what Habitat did for me.
Maria, thank you. Lisa.
So, I mean, I'm not worried about my generation, honestly. People in my income bracket, I can still afford rent. Even when they hike it up, I was still able to stay in my place. I'm more worried about people that aren't in my income bracket. I'm more worried about people that are older, or the silver tsunami that's coming. I'm worried about people that are getting priced out. It's not a secret that we have a homelessness crisis, and I mean, I'm from here. I've seen it get worse and worse and worse. And so that's really where my concern is. I'll be fine. I'll figure out a way to make it work. I'm creative, and again, none of these solutions are new. They're just difficult. They're challenging. They're not very accessible.
But not quick either.
They're not quick either, exactly.
Cash.
Yeah, definitely agree with what my fellow panelists have said. I think especially in a place like Orange County or Los Angeles, there's a really tough reality for young people that sets in. Like in my case, renting a nice, larger, 2-bedroom unit over 1,000 square feet. It's actually more affordable to rent a nice product at that size than it is to buy something. And so I do fundamentally think, based on our experience and what everybody's experiencing, there needs to be change in the housing market. The status quo, what worked for people 50 years ago was awesome, but how do we recreate that today? Because that's not working.
Right? Are you still hopeful despite all this?
I'm always
You
hopeful.
got to be, right?
Yeah, of course. You got to be hopeful. And working with organizations like People for Housing and Habitat, that gives you hope, right? Find a community, right? Know that you're not everybody is going through this. And so I think it's really important to also speak out. As Elizabeth said, right? Talk to your local
Council
officials.
members.
Yes, your people that are running for office, right? If somebody ever asks you for your vote, ask them what they're doing about housing.
Cash, thank you very much.
It's all the time we have for this evening. Thanks to our panel for being here tonight and giving us all this insight on an issue that's affecting so many of us. Charles Feldman, I'm Mike Simpson, and thank you also to our producer, Jonathan Service, for putting this together. You can watch and listen to this at knxnews.com. Good night.
Good night, all.
Priced Out of SoCal is a production of KNX News, 97.1 FM, and Odyssey Los Angeles.
Watch and listen on demand at knxnews.com and on the free Odyssey app.